Welcome to the Cowboy Office Show, where you'll experience expert analysis and epic discussion on key pillars of the equine industry, including sports, business, hobby, and the horse lifestyle. Your co-hosts are Jody Brainerd and Brian Dykert, industry veterans with over 120 years combined living the cowboy lifestyle. The Cowboy Office Show will help you get involved, ask more questions, and create change. We'll keep riding for you as together we learn from the ride already ridden, learn to listen better to our horse, and make our industry better for all. Each weekly episode will take a ride around the industry in less time than you can load the truck and trailer. Drop your email at cowboyoffice.com to receive weekly updates and never miss an episode. Saddle up as we ride into today's show.
Hello, horse world. This show's for the reiners. The fact that it will change is not new. How we direct change is upon us. In this show, we're going to cover the NRHA rule change proposals for our sport and organization as we head towards 2026. Can't believe it. Ride with us by going to cowboyoffice.com, put your email in. We provide lots of data and analysis. We try to bring videos when we can. Don't forget to click on the subscribe button of your platform of choice. Welcome to the Cowboy Office. I'm Brian.
And I'm Jody. I'd like to welcome our guest. In our sport is all about good ground, good judges, and good purses. Today, we've got a true one-of-a-kind that I have known way longer than I care to admit. NRHA Futurity Champion, Open World Champion, past president, Hall of Fame member, and most importantly, our good friend. And again, like we've known him forever, because it's true, we want to welcome Rick Weaver. Rick,
thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you so much, guys. You know, it feel like they were sitting in a bale of hay at the stalls, figuring out what we're going to do for our next run. So it's so great to hear your guys' voices and to be able to see you as well.
Welcome. Well, yes, it's great to have all of us. It's reminiscent of the old days, Joe Cody Classic and all the rest.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about the industry. Our industry is trying to grow, definitely changing. Education, communication, and knowledge is one of the most powerful tools that we can help to utilize and leave it all better for the next ones. The three of us have a very unique set of perspectives on where the NRHA has come from. There's a blessing and a curse in that, where the NRHA is and where the NRHA may be headed. We got two past presidents, and all three of us have served as chair and active members on the judges committee for years and years, as well as active judges. Rick, you're still active on judging. Jody and I have both retired our card. No big deal. But the point to the whole show is bringing some of that knowledge and expertise to the rest of the industry. Things that we've already learned, things that we've tried before, and things that we may need. There's over 40 rule change proposals on the slate to be acted on by the board of directors for 2026. We're going to go through each of those proposals. We will highlight the proposals that are necessary. There's a lot of them that are kind of administrative, more clerical in process. We won't slow down on it. We will slow down on the big pieces that we think are important to talk about. For members of the NRHA, go to NRHA.com. There's a button there because the NRHA is soliciting the members to fill out a survey on these rule proposals. So you have the ability to do the survey, put in your approval, disapproval, and or any notes you want. That's all due March 31st. Remember to go to NRHA.com, fill out the survey. There's basically 4 categories for the rule changes. This is the way the NRHA batched them up. There's 2 of them for members and licenses. There's 15 of them for events and shows, and I found that very interesting. There's 9 of them for judges and stewards. I thought that was interesting as well. And then there's 14 that are clarifications, and I think that's good for the organization to constantly clarify the rule book and the process. We kind of batched them up into 4 key categories: professionals, non-pros, show rules, officiating rules, and administration. So we're going to go ahead and go through those and see where the industry is trying to go. This is just the header page, which gives you the 4 categories as the NRHA brought it out. And the first one is the non-pro ineligible time period. This is the one that I thought this was somewhat interesting, but for people over 65, this is about if you want to be a non-pro after being a pro. And so I thought it was pretty interesting. I'm not sure where they're wanting to go, but it's highlighted on after you're 65 And if you've won less than $200,000 in NRHA earnings, you can be a non-pro quicker than what the current rule book is. You guys got a take on that?
Rick?
Yeah,
What do you think about it?
I really don't. I don't see a reason to change it. There's still other classes that we can go in when we're 65. And I mean, there's other avenues for us to do that, not to step into the non-pro particular era. So you got to remember that we came from the time when there's only 2 classes, right?
Yes.
And so that's what you did. You entered. So I think that to find yourself another level, I think is doable, because horses you end up taking and deciding on what level we show at anyhow. And so when you get to that particular age, I think there's still a lot of, especially now, there's so many classes and abilities you have to compete. I really don't see stepping into a category with non-pros to be something I would be in favor of.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, the non-pros got some issues being a professional and being over 65. We don't even have to go there. I think that, Rick, when you were talking about 2 divisions, I think there's, I think today's solution, and not just in NRHA, but it's just to add more divisions so that everybody gets a prize. And, it's not necessarily, as long as we're briefly on that topic, I will tell you, and Rick, you fully well know this, but there is a hell of a difference between 50 and 65. So that primetime class, I would get rid of that 50-year-old age bracket and just raise the open level up higher, because it just, it's not the same. So anyway.
Right. One of the things that I found interesting in reading through it this year that they used to always do in the past was also provide who submitted the rule. Then you knew if it was an individual, or you knew if it was a committee, or if you knew it was staff or whatever. They did not do that this year. And so then it left the reader a little bit puzzled, because you got to assume that it's gone through some NRHA vetting yet. And I could be completely wrong that they haven't yet. So I think that that's interesting, but where would that pressure be coming from that want 65-year-olds that have been pros to be easier to go non-pro? I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me. This one's really simple. This is the competition license for short stirrups. And what it says is you don't need to. So they're trying to make it easy for short stirrups, horses, riders, all the rest of that. And you don't have to have a competition license. You got to take?
Agreed. I mean, short stirrups, the kids are the backbone and going to be future members. And if it makes it easier for them to ride a Shetland pony without a competition license, bring it.
Come on. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not so sure. I'm not on the other side of that, Joe. I think that, especially since we push for the licenses and you're trying to get money for everything and people need to get into it. Also, think there needs to be a little vetting in the type of people that come in the short stirrup, because an awful lot of the time I see, especially in some of the areas, you see some horses that get in there that aren't safe and shouldn't have to maybe be in there. And I just don't, because we have, by the way, if you guys have judged very many or seen very many short stirrups class, the short stirrup at the Congress, and some of those are huge and really competitive. And so I don't know that I would change how people get into the class, because I think that no different than one you'll see later on where they want you to go ahead into their watered down reining version where they don't want you to have a license for it. I just think that it's fine the way it is for them to have to go through the steps, the parents, the horses, and everybody to have a horse that has a license.
I think the data, the records stay cleaner. Without it, it gets even messier. But I agree with Rick.
Well, that used to be the only thing that we had that was of value as our records, right? So when we were having the world champions and all that stuff and we owned all that data, that had great value.
No, I agree. The next one is really simple, because all this one does is change we used to go calendar year, January 1 to December 31st, and for administrative purposes. So it's really not much to talk about.
Okay.
This one's going to be interesting. This is introducing an amateur division into the futurity. It breaks the non-pro into another category. So let's talk about that. The non-pro has been an issue in our industry for our lifetime. and it's now wanting to grow because it wants to subcategorize into an amateur, and then taking it. I think there's two parts to this, and I was a proponent of this back when I was on the board. I was a strong advocate that non-pros shouldn't be riding futurity horses, and if we wanted to put our resources to anywhere, they should be in the Derby. So then we can go that way. That's one on aged events. And then the second piece is the non-pro amateur. And what is that difference? And the reality is, because there's a section of the industry that the pro non-pro is dominating it, and it is driven by money. And as a sport, should it be? That's the bigger question.
Well, I've got a point that I'll make, and I've said this many, many times, and it'll open up the huge can of worms, but it's good discussion. But I've often said this about being a professional, and what I wanted was for NRHA to give me enough credit to know what kind of livestock I'm riding. In other words, if I have that 217 horse and I happen to be a level 2 or level 3 rider, that's where I want myself and my clients' money to go. NRHA tells me, no, I have to go hand whoever's got better livestock than I do a portion of my entry fee. I've always disagreed with that, because you're telling me that no matter what kind of horse you got, I may as well just walk up to a top 20 guy and give it to him, because I don't have enough livestock to catch it. So I either have to stay away from the futurity, or I have to lose part of my clients or my owner's money. I think that any of this stuff could happen if you let people put their money where they want to. I think the divisions would take care of itself. And I think you wouldn't have to add another amateur division, because I think you would have people that would say, no way, I don't want to go show against the top 20 riders. They'd say, I'm going to put my money down here in the 2 and the 3, or the 1 and the 2, where I'm eligible. But anyway, that's just my take on it.
Yeah, and I don't know, Brian, what the data is for how successful that's been in the futurity at this point. Do you have any of that?
Not in a breakout to amateur versus non-pro, because I don't think they have it.
All right. Okay. So for me, where the amateur argument has always been about the trainers' wives, the professionals and their families showing in the non-pro and stuff like that, and then the other non-pros, and the domination of, I've never been in favor of penalizing people for being good at what they do. Right. But the domination of some of the trainers' spouses and their kids and stuff like that, I think spurs the people trying to go ahead and find, another avenue to go down what Jody's talking about, so they have a chance at some of their own money. It doesn't all go there. But then back to the same thing is, I think that, not to penalize people for being real good at what they do, I think sometimes you just have to go and get better at what you do, go and try to get better. So that question, I still struggle with trying to make a new class for everything. That's just not, something that I am comfortable with. I understand the argument. I would like to see, some data behind what it is that they've tried it, to see how, it used to be, and I don't even know how many years that they have tried it, from 10,000 feet.
They've been playing with an amateur section in the Derby, I think.
Okay. So when
2 years.
Okay. So when we used to make rule changes, we had kind of a thing where it'd be 3 to 5 years before we touched it again, because we wanted to see how it did. Right. And I think there's some wisdom in that. So perhaps they need to continue on down that pathway and have some analytics on what it is, how that impacts, that particular part one way or another. And then maybe you could answer a little bit better. But I'm cautious at this point to say that I think that that's a good idea.
Do you guys have a sense or a feeling on non-pro futurity horses versus non-pro aged event horses?
So I'll go first. I think that the horses and riders have gotten so good that I don't think that the argument that non-pros shouldn't have 3-year-olds is probably valid anymore, especially since that's where you got to follow where all the money is. But goodness sake, some of these young riders and non-pros and the horses that they're riding and stuff, it's exciting to, participate and judge them. I mean, they've gotten so good. I think the quantity and quality have gone up so much that I think that it's a good thing.
Yep. Okay.
I agree. I mean, I think that again, Rick, and you just, you said it. It's just, I always liken that to, I can be as a professional, if I were a NASCAR driver and I'm in Indianapolis and I get in a NASCAR and one of those guys gets in my Nissan 2004 Ranch pickup truck, and I don't care if you're the best NASCAR driver in the world, I probably got a pretty good chance I'm going to beat you because my car's better. And it's like Rick said, I think it's the horsepower that makes the difference. These guys are such good riders now that when they have a good horse, they're like an open rider. I mean, some of these young people are.
And I hear you. And that's true on the non-pro side. But my point to that, especially on the futurity, on the 3-year-olds, and now we're seeing our industry. I mean, before the futurity that was it. And there wasn't much after the futurity. So everybody put all their emphasis into those 3-year-olds. Our industry has truly grown in our lifetime to the point where the 3-year-old is the step. The aged event now, the 4-year-old and above horse in all the classes and divisions, that's true. Where I was going was, can non-pros compete in the futurity? Yes. Where would they go? And if you wanted to, do we have a phenomenal event? Yes. And all they have to do is enter. They don't have to change anything, just enter. It's having the segments different for the non-pro and the open side. That was my only point. And I agree with you in today's time, especially depth and volume. And could you build bigger purses, more significant, make the economics drive the industry even stronger, value of horses, etc. That's still my big one on the futurity horses.
Right. Well, that's, and again, the best part about that is it drives a conversation about how we're doing, where we are and where we want to go, so I think that's the type of stuff that hopefully when the board looks at that type of stuff and leadership looks at that type of stuff, that you come up with, a good conversation, because I think what you're talking about is important.
Well, let me give you one set of numbers, because this was just published. It just came out in the Rainer last month. On the non-pro side, top 20 non-pros, categories 1 through 11. So on annual earnings, all competition, basically on that side, top earner was $440,000, and 20th was $62,000. So that's money earned on. And my point to that is, that's a limitation to others. You, in order to be a non-pro, that is a select category. That's very different than being on the open side where anybody can come. And we just saw it. The Run for the Million qualifier, you had non-pros riding other horses to try and get qualified for the Run for the Million in August. That's not, that's a healthy thing. That's good. All they got to do is enter. That was my point. We don't have to beat it up forever, but I think it's interesting.
I think that is too. And Rick, I'd throw this one out there at you just because I would like an opinion. But I've often said on these podcasts that we do, I said, who do you think number one who has the most influence? Is it the owners group or is it the professional trainers group? And when I talk about how much influence do the open trainers have on their owners, and I would ask you if obviously you and I probably wouldn't do this because we're from a different generation, but I would ask you how many professionals that you know of in today's market would say, if they had a really good 3-year-old that started as a non-pro and ended up being in their top 3, that they would say, let me show it, instead of their client show it.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. But I think the dynamic of our industry has changed quite a bit, because it used to be that we would get to guide people, and, so they would come in and you would have the business and you would be doing that stuff for them and you would be able to guide them into a direction. I think a large part of it, except for probably a handful of people, I think it's changed some, that I think the owner now has a lot bigger voice in it, not always a good way, because they take and trade, if they don't like something, sometimes they trade trainers, sometimes like you change your hat. And so the loyalty of customer and professional relationship has changed dramatically in the amount of years since, we started in the way it is now. So it's just a whole different dynamic. The business world now and all the stuff that's available to them. They have a lot of information. So therefore, the silo that they take all their information from, they have an opinion. And so sometimes when they hire certain people, depending on what kind of answer they're getting from them, they might be okay or not okay. So I think that it's changed quite a bit, Jody, from the time when we would take in, be working for some of the people and do exactly what you said. And, they would follow that. Now it's an awful lot of the times, if they don't like the answer, if they're going to go somewhere else. So I think it's changed quite a bit, which, money will do that.
Yeah, I laugh, and I that's exact. I mean, spot on. I would also tell you that when we were kids, we can remember when our football teams had players that guys that stayed there for 10 or 12 years too. And now we're cheering for uniforms because it might be 2 years and they're gone. So
yeah, absolutely.
Turnover's fast.
Yeah, it sure is.
The next one, this one's simple because it's just taking we used to define maturity, and they're taking it out.
Yeah.
So all the aged events are doing their
whatever.
thing, and stakes, derbies, etc. This one, we're going to spend some time on ranch reining. They are proposing to put in a whole segment. We won't go through all of the details, but the mere concept of wanting to take, these are added classes of ranch reining into our rule book and into our show process. And they've got the patterns added into it. I found it very interesting because it read to me like, okay, the NRHA is going to change to the NRRA. Is that where we're headed? Are we going to ranch reining instead of reining as we knew it?
I would throw something in here first. And again, times have changed, and there's SHOT, the Stock Horse of Texas, and that kind of stuff. They had a big show. I mean, with 3 or 4 of these associations combined at the Lazy E last year. And because it was close for us, Amy and I jumped in the truck and trailer and let her go over and show in the amateur division of it that she qualified for. And there was almost 50 head in the reignings both days. But it was a great time, maybe like those small NRHA reignings that we used to go to at a, very, just a fun level, and everybody's cooking outside and they're staying there. And it was just a really good time. We could haul in and haul out. But my point is that there are associations for that. And I don't think they needed to be added to water down what is the epitome of the Western horse for us, the best that there is. So just my point.
No, I want to emphasize, I agree with you. In the watered down reining part, I don't think is the direction we need to go in. I understand it because we have leadership. They come from the breed organizations, right? And so in the paradigm that they look through, that's kind of a way that growth looks like to them. So if the goal is, and let me step back some, I think one of the biggest things, guys, that is missing in our industry is to understand and respect our history. I think that without that, I think that some of the pathway forward, and this gets lost because that they don't understand our history or respect it. So back to Jody talking about that we are the pinnacle of Western horsemanship, right? Reining doesn't supposed to be easy. It's hard,
right.
Right. And I don't think that we need to lose that. And I get, again, the paradigm that I don't know Mr. Smith and some of where he comes from with the breed organization. I get that they see that that's a pathway to try to get more memberships and growth. And I just don't think that that's the way, when there was not the internet and we weren't so exposed, we need to try to go, laterally as much as we could to try to get people to come in. But that's not the case anymore. We're so accessible and everybody gets to see, great reignings that I don't think that, going in to have, the patterns didn't make a lot of sense to me, because if you're going to have really beginning reining, I can't imagine sitting there for beginning reining and they have to go ahead and spin 3.5 times each way. I mean, that's not well done. So I don't believe that we should adopt anybody else's patterns. We are reining. And I think that if we need to make more patterns, that's what NRHA needs to do, not adopt other ones. And, it's kind of we already have the ride and slide. It's pretty much the same thing. And we created that divisions when we had a program used to call Rookie Days, and it was hugely popular. And we had some great people in the organization that had the passion that would run it. Well, it was a vehicle that we had given them. So when they would go to barns or to put on the rookie days, they had the ability to go and have simple patterns and to introduce people into reining through that. And it's not a whole lot different than what they're doing there. I do not believe that that's the right pathway to go. I believe what you need to try to do is to go back into, and so in our history, we always had aged events, and then what we had was world championships and people that wouldn't go any more than 350 miles to a horse show. That's how we divvied up. So the affiliate program was hugely popular. And also we have our world champions. So, when there's only the futurity and just a couple classes, the world champion things were a big deal. And then also the weekend horse shows were a big deal. And then when we created the affiliate, it was hugely, it was a big boost for all of the regional people because the affiliate championship really meant something. And so when I believe the point of demarcation probably was when they opened up the North American Championships to where you didn't have to, you could just go there and show instead of going, you killed the affiliate champions because why would people do that? So all those people that worked and had to go to their affiliate show, had to qualify, you had to go ahead and be in the top 8, that was a big deal. Well, that's just servicing another part of our industry that I think that should be focused on now, not trying to have watered down reining, but to take our world championship program and take a look at our affiliate program and reinvent it. And so that we would service some other people, want to have reining, but it's still a level of reining that people you have to go get help. You have to get a good horse to be able to do reining. You shouldn't just be able to show up and make a pattern. So my direction would be trying to reinvent our affiliate championship and take a look at also if our world championship program is an antiquated model, and maybe look at the whole thing and try to reinvent that, not try to go and to drag in another class. And let me say one more thing about that. So when you're out there competing, when you go to shows, back here, one of the issues that we have is you don't have 3 and 4 arenas back east. You usually have 1, maybe 2, and that's it. So by the time you start having other classes, you start bringing in, so you have the ranch riding. So that's going to take up a certain amount of time. And then because there's no other place to work your horse, now in a money maker for the affiliates, you have paid warm-ups. So by the time you have paid warm-ups, and then now you have a ranch reining or a ranch riding, and that takes an amount of time. So by the time you get done with that day, the only place you have to work your horse is in that arena. And now all of a sudden, maybe you have 6 hours left of arena time before it starts again. And if you take multiple horses to a horse show, trying to take them, get them worked, and get the people there on time to do all that stuff is usually not possible. So trying to manage that. So sometimes I have to take and make sure I book paid warm-ups, because if I have enough horses there in the arena, because when they have that, now they shut the arena down now too. So you don't have open riding, then you only have paid warm-ups. So now maybe you only have so many hours of regular riding to get your horses ready. And so by the time you take a boatload of those, and then that just rolls over again. So adding to that, as you can tell, I'm probably not, I don't believe that's the right direction.
I love the passion.
I
exactly.
thought I might have been the only one.
No.
Yeah. No. Excuse me, Brian. Go.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say it's I think you said what we're all thinking, guys that have done this for a living. And like I said, I'll go back to that Stock Horse of Texas. That was a great show, and we had a blast at it. And if you think that those 50 head of stock horses that were shown in the rain and weren't good, I mean, it took us 73.5 to win the class. So, I mean, they were good horses too, but it's an option. And I will tell you that watering stuff down our AQHA World Show is a good example of that. I mean, the World Show used to be, we would go to it. It was a big thing. And I mean, you'd be trying to get in the top 10 at that thing. And now there's, 8 horses in it, and nobody wants to go qualify. And it just, we all get it.
Yeah.
Right. Well, now it doesn't mean anything. Rick's passion on the whole topic is phenomenal. And I agree with you. And I'm the same way, Jody. There are organizations out there I think ranch riding is nothing but good, but let them do their thing. Does that segment of the industry need to come inside the NRHA? My answer would be no. And I found it silly. And then comes the rest of your point, Rick. Last I looked, there isn't a horse show out there that's dying for entries. That is not the problem. The problem is actually the other side of the equation. We have plenty of entries. You add more classes, you're adding more days, you're adding more expense, you're adding more problems. It's actually how do we begin to looking at our horse shows in a very different, I think Rick's on it 100% on how do you reinvent the affiliate championship, put the integrity back into the world titles like they used to be. And can you reinvent that? And the answer is yes. The ranch riding thing that was my first reflex. Well, the NRHA is going to turn into the NRRA. I mean, that's what it said to me. And I agree with you, Rick, on our current executive director, commissioner, Mr. Smith. I found that fascinating as well because the NRHA left the breed stuff in the 60s. And if that's our mentality and our vision, then we're actually going backwards, not forwards.
Right. So that's why Dale and Jax, they went and started NRHA to probably begin with, because they wanted to go ahead and go in that direction. And let me say a few more things about it. And again, I don't blame the staff that you have because, they come from the breed organizations, but we have a board. We have a board that oversees that stuff. So it's not just them. If somebody doesn't go ahead and tell them that they don't think it's a good idea, then, like I said, they're not bad people. They're not doing it for bad reasons. It's just what they believe and what they see. But if you look at our executive board, we have a bunch of brilliant people on there. I mean, these are good horsemen that know what the heck's going on. The important thing is it important to them? Because, they have done such a good job of promoting our purses are bigger, our horses are worth money. I mean, it's just phenomenal what they've done. And all of them live within that confines of the industry, the breeding and all that. So you got to be careful that you don't become too comfortable, because then some of that stuff won't be important to you. And if you don't make it important to you, then staff is just going to be left to go ahead and to handle it. It's not just on those people. It's the whole group that needs to go ahead and pay attention to it and give it some energy. You have to have enough passion about it to give it the energy. And if it's something you're not passionate about, it probably, the energy will just pass by.
No, I think you're on it. You're bringing the direct reflex of where we've come from. Because in our lifetime as a second generation of reigners, that is exactly what drove us for all those years. And I agree with you on today's a new day. But one, understanding that part, and then two, might that help them with the vision. So, and I'm not sure where they're trying to go with their strategic plan and vision, because if it's just volume, you can look at any of our colleague associations and see that that's not the answer.
Yeah, I think that's well said. I think that something else you have to understand, you guys do, because you lived in the board area, that when you join the board, it's a whole different world. When it's a different skill set that you have to have. And if you remember, Brian, when we were president, and even before us, that we used to go ahead and have people come in and teach people how to be on the board of directors, because it is a different skill set to go in there and try to have an idea and to try to go in and turn that idea into a conversation so that people can go, when you get in front of a group of 30 or 40 people, and you want to try to be passionate about your message, you better be prepared, because, it's going to be a little different than just talking to your buddy around the corner. I think one of the things that people suffer, and this in leadership and in staff's defense, you have a bunch of people that don't come prepared. In the 11th hour, they read the thing and then they come in and scream and holler. In leadership, what you want to ask for is people to come up with a solution. Don't give me the problem. I already know the problem. But, go ahead and give a solution, bring it to us, and then let us tear us. But, come with a solution and a good way to go and try to communicate that. And that's a learned skill set, not a natural one. And so, especially now that the board has changed how it operates. So when I was president, there was 44 board members. and the board of directors made all decisions. Well, I believe that from 10,000 feet, I think that they changed it a few years ago to where the executive board can make a lot more decisions than they used to. So now all of a sudden, that conversation doesn't go as far as what it once did. And then the people, a lot of the people on committees and also on the board of directors, they don't know, NRHA operates on Robert's Rules of Order. Well, it's basically a loose version of Robert's Rules of Order. So what they have to understand is the good news about Robert's Rules of Order, you can go ahead and bring something up forever. The bad news is with Robert's Rules of Order, you can bring something up forever.
Forever.
And we lived that because when we went through that, there was a time that we had to hire a parliamentarian to get through our meetings because it was so contentious, right? And so that is why that the people that get in those situations that want to bring something to the board, they have to understand how that board functions and how they can go ahead and try to get their message across. Because otherwise you're liable to get in a room and the agenda will blow you out of there. And if you don't know how to inject yourself in it, next thing you know, they're out the door. And I don't blame staff for, or people for doing that. I've done that myself. But the thing is, you just have to understand how that mechanism works. We always would say that if you really want to slow something down or stop it, give it to a committee, because next thing you know, nothing will get done. Yes. So we would take a task force. And so when you have a task force, there's a drop dead date for that. So you give them the job, they have to do it, and they got to be done. But to run those things, and we had some brilliant people that would run those task force, because a lot of that stuff was above our grade level. We didn't know, but we would get the people around it that knew about it and task them with that. And we had some champions in those rooms to go ahead and drive those conversations. So by the time that they got done with that, they would come up with a solution. So you got to understand that you have to have that type of energy's got to go into this type of stuff before it ever gets to the board. And then, like I said, I don't blame staff and some of the board that you get people to come there and they don't even read the stuff before they get there. That's not what you want.
The next one, I'm going to batch these next two because I found this fascinating. There are two sets of rules that are actually kind of contradictory. They want to add a new novice horse green section, which goes to the dummying down of the sport of reining. It just makes it simpler. They want to add a new novice horse green section. I'm going to bring with it, they are struggling with the novice horse level 3 on both the open and the non-pro. And the rule proposal on that one is that there aren't enough horses and riders to qualify for top 10 world championships. So the proposal is the NRHA, the cost to service the top 10 is about $5,000 per section. I'm interpreting that. So that's 10,000, 5,000 for the open, 5,000 for the non-pro. What didn't make any sense to me is why in the world would you be trying to put in another novice horse that's even simpler when you're struggling with one of the divisions that's in there now that I think is 4 or 5 years old? They do now have the numbers. You're talking about less than 10 horses that in a year's time are out there playing at the level 3 novice horse. So it didn't make any sense to me, but I find it fascinating. And I think it goes exactly what we were already talking about. 1, dummying down, 2, not paying attention to data. And then 3, where in the world are you trying to go?
Yeah, not to insult or try to insult anybody that put forth the rule, okay? Because somebody obviously felt that it was important enough to put the thought into it and the work to put it forth. And I just can, like say, offer a personal opinion. I think it's ridiculous. So anyway, that being said, gentlemen.
Yeah. No, and what about the level 3 novice, open and non-pro? You're talking about 6 and 7 horses per year over the last 4 years. I did the survey and I put in 2 things. 1, should the NRHA put that burden of price on the exhibitor? The answer is no. If you're going to offer world titles, service them accordingly. If the numbers aren't there, take the section out, period. That was my take.
Yeah, we may need to turn this over to Dodge.
Doge. Yeah. Yeah. I agree with both of you. It's really pretty simple. The level 3 just needs to go away. Just stop it. But it's just not a good idea. Go show in an open, for goodness sakes. You need to go ahead and have a novice horse that won so much money. Go show in an open. And as far as the two-handed class goes, that's not the place for it. To have more classes when you're judging and you have more divisions inside of a class, it's not a good thing. It makes it more difficult. If you want to have your two-handed class, it goes with the green most times at some of the places. If you feel necessary that that's a good thing, that's fine. Besides that, from what I can remember, just go get your horse broke so you can show with one hand. If you don't have somebody that's good enough to get your horse broke to do that stuff, then go hire somebody else. But I mean, just get your horse broke. We didn't used to have, and I realized it's probably apples to oranges, but we didn't used to have several years to train a horse. We used to have to ride him like for 4 or 6 months. We had to go show him. And so somewhere along the line, for the customer's benefit, and for that, you need to be able to get them broke and go enter them, or be honest with your customer that that you're not ready or you can't do it.
The next one, this one should be an interesting conversation. I don't know how you guys, the slide contest. We saw 100X bring the slide contest back to the industry. We've seen slide contests in our time. 100X brought it to the market last year, made it crowd appealing, all the rest of that. But now the NRHA is proposing to put in a whole section of just a slide contest, include show conditions, modified officiating conditions, etc. You guys, I'm completely against it. I think it's ridiculous. If a show wants to put it on for an audience and do what they want to do, let them, they can do whatever they want to do. But for the NRHA to go into the regulatory and standardization of that, I found it ridiculous.
Agreed.
Yeah, that's kind. That's kind. That's kind. Yeah, and you got to understand. So, we had a sponsor that decided that that's what they wanted to do, and they threw a bunch of money out to go ahead and do it. That's good. We'll make it an exhibition like that you have. But I think we've become more sophisticated in reining than that is what that just presents. And I've judged it as well. And there's not a lot there to be able to try to go ahead and separate all that stuff, and I think it's a novelty. And if there wasn't all the money that had been put toward that, I don't think there'd be the interest. My question is that going to be sustainable? Are you going to be able to have the sponsorship to go ahead and put the money up to make that sustainable? And I would say it's probably not.
I agree. The next ones are a bunch of kind of clerical ones, so we'll roll through them pretty quick. Nominator earnings, that's a no-brainer. I don't know if it's really controversial. The next one after that's short stirrup helmet. I think that's a no-brainer. I don't know why we didn't have that in the first place. The attire, I have no earthly idea where this was coming from, but you got to roll down your sleeves and you must wear chaps. And then they're putting in the rule book that you can't wear sweatshirts. So I don't know where this is coming from and who thinks this might be an issue, but I found it, I don't even know what the right word is other than unpleasantly fascinating that this might be a problem. And then along with attire is international. Jody's got some colleagues and close friends in Mexico, and I understand that concept of it, but this rule is about allowing traditional attire to be cowboy attire for reining, and I'm against it. I think no, but do you guys have a take on it?
Well, all of the reiners that I know and the good clients from Mexico, they dress like they're from the United States. I mean, they're not wearing sombreros in their calas. They're typical events. Yes, but they do as we do here.
Right.
And I would expect us to do, if we're going to go show them the colors, we're going to put the lid on just like they got. But yeah, it's, the guys from Mongolia, does he come in with a little hawk on his arm? Or, what the heck? No, dressed like a cowboy, show your horse.
Right.
Yeah, I have no words for that. I agree with you guys. Just have no words.
Oh, That shows that we're getting older without a doubt. European event deadlines. This is just a clerical function. It's about deadlines for European shows to get their paperwork in. That's not a big piece. Ancillary event approval. This is adding C and D level events. This one is show managers and show reps. And I think this one batched into what they're doing two things. One, separating out the duties. And I think that that's always been healthy. Show secretaries, show managers, show reps, and then is having family members showing at those responsible entities. So this particular rule is adding C and D level shows into it. It's just bringing it down from where A and AA have. Event approval show stewards, they're moving into the space of using, this is an overhead cost to horse shows. And I don't know how many people in the industry even pay attention to this stuff, but we are more active in having professional show stewards. That's true. Shows have to hire those stewards, and they do carry much more responsibility than they have in the past. And now they're wanting to allow the family members of show stewards to be showing or competing. And the caveat is in shows big enough to have two stewards or more, because they think they can put that arm's length between the responsibility of competition. You guys got to take?
I had a question about this. So I talked to some stewards, and because I just was unclear about it. And you have to try to believe that people are the best of people. And so if they have two of them, that way they believe if there is an issue with a family member, that the other one would handle it. To me, I just assume that it's going to be a huge financial boost for shows to be able to utilize that instead of not. And I've never been to a show where there's not a steward that I hadn't wished there was. I think they're a wonderful thing, and it's a really good tool. But I also understand that there's no way some of the smaller shows can afford to do that. If there's a financial gain for the show committees to be able to utilize something, I would be willing to go ahead and believe the best in people that it could work. But that's what I had gotten from it.
Jody and I have talked about this a lot on some of our shows. Conflicts of interest in today's time versus our time. Are we better at that or worse at that? Is it more of an issue or less of an issue?
I think it's just more of an issue because of the exposure that we have to everything. Before it was word of mouth, is basically that you would see some of that stuff. Now there's everything that we do is on a camera. So I don't believe that people are any more devious than they once were. I think they've always been devious. But the other part is we have such exposure now because if everybody has a camera and a phone, that I think that's what the difference is.
Yeah, that conflict word is there's a dual-edged sword, and we both look at it. I mean, we all three of us can look at it like from the judging standpoint. I always felt like if somebody said that there was a conflict, then our officials weren't doing a good job. Mm-hmm. So, in other words, if your officiating is accurate, there should be no conflict. I mean, you could have your brother show to you. And I think also one of the things is that the steward program is still young enough that they're trying to figure out how to get more of the experienced stewards through the program. So there's a handful of them that do all the majors, and that you want to send them in the fire when that happens. I think it's just like judging. It takes a lot of experience to go ahead and to be able to do your best. And I think it's the same way with stewarding. It's not just the joke where you wake up and go walk around the barn and see your friends. So I think the natural progression of the steward program is going to grow that. I think they know that that's an issue, that they have to somehow widen that gap of the experienced people in there. I think that they're working to trying to do that. But I know that they know that there's a need for more of the people that have the ability to do that.
Well, and the next one, this is just about the show stewards report, because under the current rules, they have to file a handwritten report within 15 days. This is making it within 5 days, which to me is like a no-brainer, but I actually wrote in my opinion, why isn't it within 24 hours and you do it on do it on an app? You could actually have it by the conclusion of the show, 30 minutes after the last horse. You could have that done in no time. So why are we behind on using technology?
I don't know what how they came up with the 5 days. That'd be an interesting piece of information, but all we know for sure is it needs to be a lot sooner. And if 5 days the best they can do, so be it. But I agree with you. I don't see why it can't get trimmed down smaller than that.
Efficiency. We're back to Doge. The next one, maybe call Elon. We're going to go into the judging sections a little bit. This one's an interesting one. This is on the minimum requirements to be an NRHA judge, and they're taking the age down from 25 to 21. If you look at the numbers in the last 2 years, we don't have a number issue. It's not that we don't have enough judges, and we certainly competency isn't an issue either. So I found it very curious. One, where in the world is this coming from? If the current judges committee is spending their time here, that's very troubling and puzzling to me. And if this came from some other source, I found it very curious. And why would we be wanting to do it? Do you guys have it? I think this is silly, period. I think the requirements and standardization to become an NRHA judge need to go up, not down. Needs to be tougher and more scrutinized, not easier and less. That's me.
Yeah, I would offer an opinion, and since I'm no longer carrying that judge's card, I get to pretty much say whatever I want, right? I think anytime I see something like this, I think of a younger set of owners and a younger set of trainers that believe that older riders are being marked more than younger people. And it was just an opinion. Okay. And I think that someone's going to have to say, these old guys need to stop getting marked, and we need some fresh blood in here. And, these guys we've got our first woman futurity winner. I mean, we got young people that are beating the hell out of the old guys. I mean, if you don't think Luca's going to kick his dad's butt, you're mistaken. So, but I think that it has to come from some spot. And what I feel like whoever put this forth was not judges committee, but I think it's a younger generation that say it's our turn. And I think that there might be a little background in there for that, but I'm open to opinions. Go, guys.
No, I think that's an easy one. I agree with both of you. I'm not in favor of it. And mostly an awful lot would be just because I remember what I was like when I was 21.
I remember it too. Yeah.
And the judge's chair is not where you want it, right?
Right.
Yeah.
The next one is bit guards. And I don't know where this one came from. What's the issue? All the rest of it. They just put a very distinct set of description around bit guards. Their intent to this was about the fact that the pinching the cheeks of a horse, which what a crock of noise that was.
Yeah.
So again, it put the question on where's this coming from and what's the smokescreen. The quality of our bit makers is so high that that's not the issue. And bit guards are already legal. So I don't know where the big to-do is, but anyways, do you guys have a take on it?
Yeah, it's cheating. No.
Yeah. This is supposed to, which puts it back in the judges. If judges need bit guards so that they don't have to deal with horses gapping their mouths, then they shouldn't be judges.
Yeah.
This is altering the rein length, and they're just playing with, I think this is just clarification because it's about where horses can be stopped. So I'm assuming there were some judges that are having a hard time with not understanding practical applications. Simple lead changes. They're just going into clarifying. This said to me, we've got inexperienced judges. This says to me, our education system is weak, because if they're not teaching the judges how to apply these parts in our sport, that's where the issue is, not in wording. That's my take. And the other one is walking. Have you guys ever seen a horse walk out of a rollback?
Oh, I read that one too. Yeah, I guess I probably have, but it's easy enough that we have a maneuver evaluation that can take care of that. So if you have a horse and it has a part where it walks out of the rollback, it's going to reflect in that particular maneuver group. So,
Right.
Yeah. So adding more penalties or more to a penalty so that people can go to the video monitor again and try to figure out how many steps, if he walked, how many steps that he walked, is not where we need to go.
Agreed. I would just throw in another 2 cents worth, and trust me, in the intercollegiate stuff that I've been doing, there is some simple lead changes both in the horsemanship and the reining, but it's because some of those horses that are donated that these girls have to show,
They're
they
bad.
need to do that.
They're bad.
But at an NRHA level, I don't think there should be a simple lead change.
Yeah.
I don't think there should be. So anyway, again, my 2 cents.
This one and the rule edition, they wanted to add walking out of a rollback and walking more than half the length of the arena. And I can tell you, in my 35 years, I never saw it. And I think there was only once, it might have been twice, where I used the rule of trotting more than half the circumference of a circle or half the length of the arena.
Right.
Ever.
Yeah.
So I was surprised at, like, where's this coming from? The next one is in downward transitions. And you guys will remember this stuff well, because we went through, my guess is 3/4 of the industry either wasn't around or doesn't remember.
Right.
But we went through the downward transitions ad nauseum, right?
Yes.
They're back. And this rule is wanting to make downward transitions easier and dumber, not more scrutinized.
Right. Let me take this one on first, if you don't mind, guys. So, because I had something to do with the first time we ran it away. So when we had the downward speed transitions, and then of course horses would slide to them, and then the debate was, okay, so how far can they slide before? And again, it's back to our rule book says both feet can briefly touch the ground when the downward speed transition, which the first thing I would do is get rid of that so that that's not in there. And so how we got away from this the first time was that to try to figure out, and this is before we had an in-camera. An in-camera helps that stuff if you try to figure it out if it's a break or gate or not. But still, there's a part in there to where how we got away from it is we defined, and this is useful for all maneuvers, we defined what an excellent downward speed transition would look like. And what we did, actually got it out of had a dressage book. So basically, when you went from a 4B gate to a 3B gate with virtually no motion, no commotion, that's what an excellent speed transition was like. Well, just so happened at that time, Dwayne Latimer won the 30, and he had a horse that did it spot on. And if you watch now, there's probably about 30% of all the people competing do that. That horse slows down in front and keeps driving behind, lowers its neck, and I mean that is an excellent. And so that's how you get out of some of that stuff. So going back to the part where the horses can't go ahead and lock their legs up and do that. One thing I know about our riders, they are so good. Our trainers are so good. If you tell them that that's not okay, I promise you they'll change it. And that's why they changed their downward speed transition the way they did now, because that we were taking and penalizing that. Well, now they've moved away from that and have allowed it again. I would take and make it to where if you did that, I would take the part out where both feet could briefly touch the ground. I would just say it's just like with everything else, if those feet come together, it's a 1-point penalty. And then keep right on going. I promise you, if you penalize people for that, it'll go away. But if you start to give voice to it again and allow that, and the biggest part is you can't teach it. We tried to go ahead, and so, what an excellent one looks like. Now that we have defined that, you need to tell them what that is. And then that way people can aspire to that, not the other, leave anything out.
Yeah, agreed. Right. Good explanation. We've all been there. We've all argued with it at one point or another in a room full of judges. And agreed.
The education component is a big one. And we all experienced it in a lot of different forms over many, many years. Mm-hmm. It appears to me by some of these rule submissions, that is an area of weakness that obviously the NRHA is struggling with how do we educate and or manage these interpretations of rules accordingly? This one is going backwards because this is taking the 2-point break gate out and allowing them to do what we've actually already addressed. That's my take on it.
Well, the other part too is, you use the KISS method, right? Keep it simple, stupid. So, you got to realize, people realize when you're judging, you have this equation running in your head all the time. It never stops. And so when you have certain things that pop in there that you have to go ahead and make a decision for, you need to have clarity to it so you can give it a value and get away from it, keep going, because that's part of judging and judging for hours. That's why we have the best system that is out there. We take and give things a value and get rid of it. So when you have penalties and things like that you have to try to figure out if it was or if it wasn't, and you need clarity from NRHA and from our rule book to be able to make those determinations so that you can do it. Because you can clearly go ahead when something is down there like that, you can clearly make it also a maneuver deduction out of that. But if you just got to make it a cut and dried thing, not a what if or a but.
The next one, this is simple. Membership online. I don't know why it's just a rule clarification. No big deal. Non-pro relinquishment. This is about who gives up their non-pro status. It just says that you've got to have that done in the NRHA office 30 days in advance. So I'm not sure why that's a big deal either. Immediate family, they're adding niece and nephew to the definition of family.
I can't believe that wasn't already in it. You remember when we did that? We went through all the 900 possibilities of aunt, stepchild. I can't believe that wasn't in there.
I can't.
I have to believe it was in there at one time and it snuck off.
It might have got lost from print to digital.
Yeah, it snuck off somewhere. I promise you, that one was in there sometime.
Yeah. Competition licenses. This is just clarification because of the short stirrup piece. Forfeited earnings. If you remember, forfeited earnings, anybody that was showed in something ineligible, those monies went to the NRHA. The NRHA is now saying, show management, you keep those. That's all that's saying. I should have been that way in the first place. Categories of competition, that's not any big new other than they're bringing some of those primetime pieces to where we want to go. Youth non-pro, isn't that an automatic? Isn't the youth automatically a non-pro?
It was at one time. I'm not sure I'm not sure anymore. My guess is that probably somewhere in the tweaking of the non-pro declarations 100 times that it went ahead and got clouded.
And then we're going to go into para reining. We don't have to spend the time on all of that. They're just specialized conditions for what para reining needs. Event classification. This is adding C events, and it's being clear on the fact that $1 or more is added at the lower level entries. Event cancellation, have to make notice. No kidding. I think that might be a bigger change in the industry now because in our time, we didn't cancel events.
Okay.
Age, show, closed event, and show conditions. It's about the added money. This is a rule clarification. This is an interesting one because what this rule is saying, the way we've always been in the past, added money could never be over the top end. You couldn't add it any higher than the top end of the open and the top end of the non-pro. Right. They always got the top end of that. You couldn't add more. This is saying it can't add any more than what's one level above it. So I'm not sure where they're wanting to go. The added money for any level cannot exceed the added money in any higher levels within the open and the non-pro category. That's for category 2 and category 6. Oklahoma's reining a couple of weeks ago had 3 categories in it. It was their aged event had a 2, 3, and 4. So maybe we're beginning to move in that direction to where show producers can start to put on events that are more structured to their clientele in the region, maybe, which would be a good thing. Yeah.
Sure. I would think.
Yep. Agreed.
Entry level ride and slide. This is rule clarifications. And what it's really doing is saying a $30 application fee as opposed to 5% of the jackpot. Payouts. This adds leasees because we're leasing more horses than what we used to. That's healthy, but It just is clarification that it'll pay to lessees. I wasn't sure why they needed to redefine the hackamore. Do either of you know this?
I do not.
I have no idea why. Yeah, I mean,
Again, I have no words.
yeah,
Okay.
exactly. Yeah.
And then guess what? It brings us to the end because it's ranch reining patterns, because they have 4 of them that they've pulled from the AQHA. So that's what they're wanting to add in for the ranch reining section. It's going to be interesting to see where the board goes with all of this stuff. So that's the list of changes.
Well, that's really cool. And I would, as I'm sitting here thinking and listening to you guys talk, and the information is great, I would ask you both a question. And I can remember, Rick, when you, because open riders have bitched about major event judging since the first one,
sure.
probably, right?
Mhm.
I mean,
Right.
and so we've all had to deal with that.
Right.
And Rick came up with this genius idea that I thought was, you know what? I'm going to get these guys, I'm going to let my open riders pick major event judges, which was something new at that time. You remember that, right? And so there's some time passed, and I said, Rick, how'd that work? And he said, I can't even get enough people to eat. They would rather bitch about it than they would send me names. I mean, open rider, they wouldn't do it. I mean, from a survey, I mean, we already know that it's hard enough to get people to go ahead and vote for the president of the United States, right? So what I would ask is both of your opinions. How much of this should depend on a member survey about new rule changes? Should, if we have 15,000 members and 5,000 respond, which probably is way, way high, how much should the executive committee or the board of directors take that into consideration? Or do you think they would say, no, look, this is what's best for the industry? I mean, do you think that board of directors would take that membership vote into consideration? I'm just asking that, guys. What about it on any of these rule changes? Any of them?
Well, you're right about one. I think it's interesting as you go down through that when you're going through it. And the survey says, sometimes that, again, the biggest part is that there's really not a large enough sample size for it to have a great opinion. It really isn't. So when you send, people don't read and people don't participate. It's just the way it is. But if you're doing your due diligence as an association, you have to ask people, and then you get some things back from it. But as far as it having a huge impact on those decisions, I don't think it does. I think that there's better avenues for the membership to be able to have an impact on something that they're passionate about. But a survey, as far as those things go for the board, I don't think it has much of an impact at all.
The survey, I agree with Rick on the fact that, can we get the membership's input and have a better pulse on where their sense could be on any given issue or subject? The answer is yes. And it's been easier and more efficient and more effective in today's time than ever before. That's true. Is the NRHA anywhere near that? It appears to me no, including the use of technology. We are not even beginning to scratch how to do that. Now, the other part of that equation is when you talk about 8 to 10,000 members in the US, another 5 to 6 international, fine. You're not talking about a whole lot of people. What it appears to, which means, 1, how do you get them informed? 2, how do you get their input? Should the NRHA leadership in today's time, we used to have a much bigger board, and the board had the ultimate authority in mine and Rick's time. And it was structured that way on purpose. And it was the representation, because then they should have had a pulse from last week and the last month from where the members were on any given issue. That's the way we did it. In today's time, with that moving to the executive level, and yes, they've got a new group of people that I have respect and ultimate faith in their knowledge and experience and wisdom. Yes. Does that mean it's easier to move with things that they may have? Do I have faith in the board? No. And now, if you got 5,000 responses out of the membership, would I be categorizing them and summarizing them? Yes. And should they have some notation to them? Yes. Whether we will or not, I don't know. The mere fact that this list of rules got all the way to the submission level, it scares me. That's me.
Yeah, I think the best work that we ever did, we'll have a friend that said, if you really want to go ahead and cause change, invent a crisis. And so we've lived through that before. And I think some of the best work we ever did was during that time, because what we did, we would have our town talks at shows, and you would get people to come there and they would be passionate about what it is that what they were wanting to listen to. And then that discussion, and that's the biggest problem, Brian, with society is now, with everything's off their phone or off the internet. And it drives people just stay in their own silos. They read whatever it is that they're thinking. They don't go ahead and look on the other side of stuff. You don't have those confrontations that we have grown up with. So we had to go ahead, as we had to learn to communicate and be in a group and do that. That stuff is fading away. But I think that's a big part of our problems with understanding of our history and respecting our history. But being able to sit down, and I am sure it spreads into the boardroom. So having the ability to sit down and have different viewpoints on something and debate that is something that's missing for everybody. And our town talks brought that to the front. It made everybody do it. Of course, we didn't have the exposure that we have now with some of this, so it was a necessary thing. But you got to get people face to face to discuss stuff. And that was the good part about the board of directors being a big part of all of the decisions had to be on a board level with that. So you had to bring the stuff to the big group, and you had to be able to convince that group that that's what it was. So God bless all the times there was that one guy that wasn't going to go ahead. And, the good news is he created a conversation that either strengthened what you believed in or made you pause. And that's the type of stuff that, with everything electronic that is available to people, I don't know how you get some of that back. I really don't, because it doesn't take any courage to go ahead and sit on the internet and go ahead and tell you that I think you're a dope, right? But if I'm sitting across from you and tell you I think you're a dope, I'm in danger. So I think that people, we're in a time when, people don't mingle and don't take and communicate like they used to. And I think that's a societal problem. I don't think it's just an NRHA problem. I think it's a societal problem that, everybody has to try to work through.
Right. But one of the things that fascinates me is, by the numbers, we are on a growth line. Oh, yeah. Every part of our industry, except for one, is on a growth line. The one thing that's not growing is membership, which means the amount of members that are leaving and going out is the same amount coming in. So the volume of the members over time is pretty status quo, true domestically, true internationally. Right. Every other part of our industry, which I don't think is a bad thing, because if that's how many people are savvy and sophisticated enough, one of the things that reining was very different than everybody else. The disciplines are very different because they were active. The membership of a discipline is active in the 90 percentile. That's very different than being a member of some other organization where you're just casually involved in it. We were active members. That's true. Active exhibitors. Where I was going with all of that is horse value is up. Breeding of horses is up. Sales of horses is up. Purse money is up. Shows are up. Venues are up. Every part of our industry. And yes, that's true, Rick, that, on the East Coast, most venues have one or two arenas. In the central and the western part of the country, they've learned how to do that. We've got more arenas. Right. Does show management and show production have to adapt according to what infrastructure of venues? Yes. Where I find all that interesting is then what would precipitate us as an organization to have a list of rules like we just went through, that it just seems to be, it's not forward advancing. It's not trying to make our product even better. It's trying to make it maybe just bigger, have more of others. And sure, that doesn't make sense to me.
I think it's, go ahead, Joe.
Okay. Well, I want to take us back just a step, and I don't lose this topic, but what I want to do is we can talk about a reining horse, and we look at them and we can't believe what our horses are doing today. And I would submit that at any time, wherever we're at, it was just as hard to win the Reina in 1983 to win the Futurity as it is right now. The quality of the horses weren't as good, but that winning that Futurity was damn hard to do. No, and it's just as hard today. And I'd served on that board of directors 3 different times, and after each and every time, I swore I would never do it again. And then, I would go back, and Frankie would say, "Come on," and I'd do it, and then I'd be, "Oh my God!" And it's just as difficult today. I mean, I haven't been on it forever, but I will promise you, it is just as difficult to be on the board today as it was 20 years ago. It's never a simple thing. And I think that when somebody served on it once, which is why we end up having to kind of recycle presidents a lot of times, because it's a lot of work, and there's no pay, and it's hard. So gathering quality people to make decisions, sometimes I think it's a little bit of a catch-22, right? I mean, isn't it hard to get convince people we need you? And it's like, yeah, I've been there and done that. I ain't go back. You know what I mean? It's like, as long as my barn's full, that's all I care about.
It's good. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think that you're right about some of that, Jody. And the only thing I can do sometimes is tell you what it looks, like through my eyes. I think that I can remember at the very beginning that someone told me, or I told myself, that I even need to shut up or get involved, right? And that's kind of how it all started. And then after that, you get to be where you're passionate about it. We're so passionate about NRHA, and maybe for different reasons, because that we, a big part of growing it and making it expand into the thing, Jody, that I always talk about at this point in time, is having the passion drives the energy for you to go ahead and to be able to do that stuff. And so, either you have a passion for a certain program or a certain thing that you want, or for me, a lot of times, and I told Brian this the other day, the passion for me now, sometimes I don't have the energy to take on, a project that, because I know that how much it takes to lead something in a direction, and it takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of energy. But I do have a passion for people. And so when I have people that I care about, if they call me up and say, "Hey, I need your help with something," I'm good with that. That gives me a reason. I'm not going to lead it, but I can be part of it. And so I think that and that's just probably to speak for me, where I am in my life with stuff like that, because I think I have probably a lot to lend to people about some of the stuff, but you also have to, number one, somebody has to ask you. And then the other part is you have to go ahead and believe that, and I think this happens for volunteers on the board, you got to believe that you're not wasting your time. So if you go to those meetings and stuff and you don't get to participate in it, or you don't get to get your idea out there, or you don't know how to get your idea out there, pretty soon that goes away. And I think that now we've made it so successful that a lot of the younger people coming up now, they just ride the wave, and they're busy. We were busy as they were, when we're doing the stuff, and found ways to go ahead and interrupt your life to go and do it because it was important. And I think that, that's just not the same anymore. I think that it's back to a societal thing, and the difference in generations now between ours and the ones that are coming. It's what they look through, and what they believe is important is different than what we did.
I think also, Jody, I found it interesting because just in the last couple of weeks, I've asked a number of people that are our age, professionals, been around the industry a long time, how many of them, one, even knew the rule changes were out? Not many.
Right.
Two, how many of them had even glanced over them and paid attention to them?
Yeah.
Almost none. So, a couple people that also served on committees could talk about some of the rules that, like the stewards. So, okay, but wasn't interested, didn't know about any of the others. And so there's a piece in there that says to me, our industry is healthy and doing well, which means, is everybody paying attention? No. And it also means they're all plenty busy enough and that we're doing okay. The rest of that is, but the leadership sitting in some hands and somebody's going to make some of these decisions. Whoa, that scares the bejeebers out of me.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think that, like I said, from a management standpoint, I think that, and Rick, you say, I think people have always been devious. Yeah. Ethics, I mean, there's always been some people with it that you could take to the bank, and some people you got, we're not trading horses. You know what I mean? It's like this ain't going to happen. And I think from a management standpoint, there's a balance, and it's really, really hard to find. On one hand, you're talking about that in camera on the gates. When I was chairing the judges committee, I called Jeremy and I said, I want you to put an in camera on that gate. And he said, well, did you get permission for that? And I said, oh yeah.
That's back to having wisdom, though, because
right.
You're easier for you to go ahead and ask for forgiveness instead of permission.
Right. So why? And you ask for permission. Somebody would tell me no, I couldn't do it. But by the same level, sometimes we've all experienced on that. Maybe that board, some stuff that's been done that maybe the membership didn't know about, and it was just maybe that stuff kept in the closet, so somebody didn't know about it. So I always said that there's a balance in there somewhere, and being a healthy balance, sometimes make that decision, go for it. And sometimes it's like, hey, I want to know what's going on because I'm a member. I want to know what's happening, and I don't get that. So anyway, kind of a catch-22.
Yeah. I get Brian's concern about it. And Brian, I just would guess that, again, we become complacent. The board, I think things are going so well in some areas that they just become complacent. They know they got to do rule changes. So therefore, probably a lot of them were individuals sending them stuff in instead of them coming out of the board, going into that. They just probably come in that way, and they flush around inside the association, then come back out on a page and know full well that probably most of them, are not going to be acceptable. But, you have to have some champions in there of a certain cause to try to go ahead and to cause some of the changes that you have talked about, or address some of the changes. It's just probably in a period of time to where, that we just don't have that.
Well, gentlemen.
Yep.
We have reached the end. Rick, we can't thank you enough. I wish we would have done this sooner and earlier. I'm glad we got it done for everybody's sake. Having a little bit of a catalog of this, I think, is healthy for the industry, but we can't thank you enough for your time. I appreciate it. Jody, I always enjoy the work that we're doing. So thank you both. This is a dynamic one. And so I appreciate it from both of your standpoints, your insights, your vision, your wisdom. So thank you very much.
Yep. You are so welcome, Rick. So appreciative of you. And I think what we need to do, Brian, is to come back on Cowboy Office, and let's do another one with Rick, and maybe let's pull John in at the same time. Let's do one about the history.
Yeah.
Let's go in. Let's talk about that. Okay.
Yes, I think it's a great idea. And the point would be, we should schedule, what we should do is just sit down and have a conversation and talk about some of the history, where we came from, how we got to where we are. And then we could collectively talk about some vision on options into the future. But if we just had that open-ended conversation and get it cataloged, I think it'd be very healthy. I'd be about it. You about it, Rick?
Oh, absolutely. You guys, I'm humbled that you guys asked me to participate. I'm a fan of both of yours, and I've known you guys a long time, and I'm really fortunate to be able to call you guys friends. So thank you so much for having me on.
All right, gentlemen.
Thanks. Yep.
It's been a blast. Talk soon.
Yep. Bye.
Yep. Enjoy the ride.
Mm-hmm.
Stay in the middle.
Today's episode is brought to you by 4D Productions in cooperation with the Consultment Agency, a full-service agency that helps bring forward-thinking equine brands into the 21st century using digital skills and services such as website development, graphic design, social media, and media production such as the podcast you're consuming here today.